Howdy, and welcome to the first episode of Bias Reviews, the series where I review things I like, except when I don't. I'm your host, Fallopian Golem, otherwise known as Hunter, and today we're going to be reviewing The Last of Us Part 2. Now be warned, this review does contain spoilers. Before we jump into what I thought about the game, let's review the facts. The Last of Us Part 2 was announced at the PlayStation Experience event on December 3rd, 2016, and then radio silence for 3 years. During Sony's State of Play presentation on September 24th, 2019, Naughty Dog finally revealed that the game would be released on February 21st, 2020. A month later, however, on October 25th, Neil Druckmann, Vice President of Naughty Dog, announced that the game was delayed to May 29th, 2020, to bring the entire game up to a level of polish we would call Naughty Dog quality. Then, on April 2nd, 2020, Sony announced that the game was almost complete but had been indefinitely delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In late April, a group of hackers leaked a mass amount of content from The Last of Us Part 2. Contents included the golfing match, the entire plot of the game, and even the ending. A few days later, on April 27th, 2020, Sony announced that the game would be released on June 19th, 2020. How did the fans react, you may ask? The fans didn't take this well, but not for the reasons you may think. Back in March, Kotaku's Jason Schreier wrote an article that brought about some of the harsh working conditions the employees at Naughty Dog were in. Jason's first paragraph stated, "One Friday night last month, some artists at the video game studio, Naughty Dog, were working on their latest game when they heard a crash. A large metal pipe had fallen from above them and landed right next to their desks. If it had dropped a few feet closer, the consequences might have been dire. It was late, past 9 p.m., and the construction workers had perhaps recklessly assumed that nobody was there. But at Naughty Dog, people were always there." The crunch seems to be a horrible and common trend among video game companies as they wrap up development for a game. Rockstar was scrutinized for it with the release of Red Dead Redemption 2, and now Naughty Dog was under fire. Fans of The Last of Us Part 2 took to Twitter, outing Naughty Dog and replying to all their tweets with leaks before Twitter implemented the ability to turn off replies. Many fans weren't only upset by the harsh working conditions, but also, as Twitter user Dabanditto stated, "It's trash story." Despite its score of 94% based on critic reviews on Metacritic, The Last of Us Part 2 has an astounding 5.6 user rating as of August 24th, 2020. The game has 141,234 user ratings. 61,978 of these reviews are negative, 72,109 are positive, and 7,143 are mixed. One negative review posted on June 29th by a user named True Logic states, "I thought it would be a good game, but feminists made it bad. I hope that in the next part they will think and make it without agitation." On the other hand, a positive review posted by user Lanois on June 19th states, "Awesome game. They did something completely different, and I can understand why some people might be mad. But when we look at it from an outside perspective, we realize that our beloved characters are part of an unforgiving world where revenge and survival are at its core. Love it or hate it, but saying it's bad because you didn't like the way it went is not a valid argument. Good graphics, good level design, and awesome performances by the actors." Lastly, one Rick's review by user Ratty Gwip posted on June 19th stated, "We wanted a sequel to The Last of Us and got a great game in terms of graphics and gameplay and disgusting in terms of plot. Overall, The Last of Us Part 2 was taking punches from the start. Leaks, unjust working conditions, and delays, and a trash story. Caused many fans to become upset, but where does that leave my review of the game? I broke the game down into 5 basic parts: story, gameplay, graphics, completion, and outside factors. I'll explain each category and what they're made of as we come to them. Before we jump into these 5 parts and break down each aspect of the game, I want to start by saying this. I love The Last of Us Part 1. It's one of my favorite video games of all time. I went into this game with incredibly high expectations. With every delay, I was heartbroken. I avoided every spoiler, and I didn't even want to hear anybody talk about it. I wanted to go into this game completely unaware of what's to come. All I had seen were the trailers and a small amount of gameplay that was shown off at either a State of Play or E3. I took a day off work to play this game as soon as it came out. GameStop wasn't doing a midnight release. I wanted to play this game so bad that I bought the digital deluxe copy and decided to pick up my collector's edition the next day. I planned to stream it and beat it in one sitting just like I had with the first one. This game meant the world to me. I had been waiting for 4 years, just like so many other fans. Part 1. The story. In this category, we'll be taking a look at the plot of the game, how the game makes us feel, and if the narrative is executed in a decent manner. The Last of Us Part 2 tells a compelling story of hate and revenge set in a horrible and unforgiving post-apocalyptic setting. Throughout the game, you swap between Abby Anderson and Ellie as they struggle to come to terms with the reality they live in and the actions they've chosen. Since her father's death 5 years ago by the hands of Joel Miller, Abby, blinded by rage, has turned herself into a killing machine and seeks revenge on the man that doomed the world and killed her dad. She gets her revenge within the first 2 hours of the game when she finds Joel and his brother, Tommy, on the outskirts of Jackson. She and her gang of friends torture and beat Joel, only to pulverize his head in with a golf club as soon as Ellie barges in the door. After knocking Ellie unconscious and sparing her and Tommy's lives, Abby and her friends leave Wyoming and travel to Washington. This leads Ellie, her pregnant girlfriend Dina, their friend Jesse, and Joel's brother on a hunt for revenge across the western coast of the United States. As Ellie loses her humanity, hunting, torturing, and killing those involved in Joel's murder, just to get to Abby and put the final nail in the coffin, she becomes blinded by hate and begins to alienate those she cares about most. Ellie grows reckless and puts everyone at risk just to avenge her best friend and father figure. She frequently travels alone and releases a tsunami of blood across Seattle. This causes her to be easily tracked. Abby, on the other hand, is busy trying to find a new meaning for her life. Before teeing off Joel's head in a nasty game of putt-putt, she was only focused on finding the man who murdered her father. Now that her revenge has been achieved and her father's soul at rest, she is seeing that the world around her is a little more fucked up. Her ideals and beliefs begin to shine through as she searches for her ex-boyfriend Owen, all while the world between her militarized gang, the Wolves, and the religious zealots, the Seraphites, enter a morally gray area, with her in the middle. She puts everything on the line to safely escape Seattle with Owen, his pregnant girlfriend Mel, and 2 former Seraphites, Lev and Yara. All this only to have it all crumble as Yara gets killed by the Wolves and Owen and Mel meet their untimely demise at the hands of Ellie. Using a map Ellie dropped at the aquarium after killing Owen and Mel, Abby tracks Ellie back to the movie theater where her, Dina, Jesse, and Tommy are staying. Abby captures Tommy, and as Ellie and Jesse burst through the entrance doors, Jesse gets blasted in the noggin. Tommy tries to break free from Abby and also gets shot in the head. You play as Abby and fight Ellie in the basement of the theater, eventually overpowering Ellie and almost killing Dina. Lev convinces Abby to spare the couple once again, and they leave to start life anew. At this point, the game flashes forward. Ellie, Dina, and their son JJ are living a relatively peaceful life on a farm on the outskirts of Jackson. This peaceful life quickly comes to an end when Tommy shows back up and informs Ellie that he's tracked Abby to Santa Barbara. Tommy begs Ellie to go track her down in California because he can't do it due to his bum leg and missing eye, but Ellie refuses. Outraged, Tommy storms out, shouting at Ellie. Dina steps in and puts Tommy in his place, all while Ellie silently holds JJ and says nothing. Plagued with PTSD caused by the gruesome death of Joel and the guilt that Tommy put on her, eventually she decides to leave. Dina warns her that she won't be there when she gets back, but Ellie leaves anyway. By now, Abby and Lev have gotten themselves caught by the militarized slave-keeping game similar to the Wolves. This information doesn't stop Ellie, though. She tracks Abby to Santa Barbara and breaks into the heavily guarded compound, only to find Abby and Lev have been tied to large wooden posts and left to die. Ellie frees the two and threatens to kill Lev just to get Abby to fight. At this point, both are beaten, worn out, and broken. Abby bites 2 of Ellie's fingers off just before being held under the ocean water to drown. At this moment, Ellie has a sudden change of heart and spares Abby, allowing her to escape with Lev and find the remaining fireflies. Ellie returns to the farm, only to find an empty house. No Dina, no JJ, and all her stuff boxed up in one room. Ellie struggles to play her guitar with her 2 missing fingers, gives up, and leaves the house, only to wander back to the front yard and into the woods. The game does an outstanding job making you sympathize with Abby and Ellie, all while questioning their motives and actions. You feel love and hate for both characters as they continue to destroy those around them and struggle to survive in a world where right and wrong seem like a long-forgotten fragment of history. Even though Abby brutally killed Joel within the first 2 hours of the game, you begin to feel empathy for her as Naughty Dog spun a story that shows just how unforgiving a world can be. You also sympathize with Ellie, because not only did Abby kill someone Ellie deeply cared about, she killed someone we deeply cared about as well. After playing as Joel for 10 plus hours in The Last of Us Part 1, we developed a deep bond with him as Ellie gave him his humanity back, and he evolved into the loving man we saw in the flashbacks throughout the game. Part 2. Gameplay. The gameplay is one of the most, if not the most important part of a video game. Here, we'll be taking a look to see if The Last of Us Part 2's gameplay is innovative, engaging, rewarding and punishing, and skill intensive. Just like in The Last of Us Part 1, Part 2 is played in third person. You use the D-pad to switch between weapons and items, you can sneak around enemies to assassinate them, or you can go into areas guns a-blazing. Clickers still use echolocation to track you, stalkers still hide and try to sneak up on you, runners are aggressive, and the bloaters are just as tanky as ever. Overall, the controls of the first game transition well into the second game. If you've played the first game, then these controls will feel very familiar to you. That's a great thing. Having that familiar yet simple control scheme allows players to jump right into the second game. Compared to other games, I wouldn't call this control scheme or gameplay innovative. It doesn't do anything majorly unique, but it doesn't do anything wrong. However, compared to the first game, Part 2 does have a smoother and tighter feel. Movement is tight and precise, which does lead to very rewarding stealth sequences and gunfights. The AI of this game is leagues better than the first. Enemies still approach the player differently if they're using a gun or not, and if that gun has ammo or not. The major difference is that the enemies search for areas more thoroughly and actually react differently depending on their allies. They'll call out the names of their friends, constantly checking to make sure everything is alright. Dogs will sniff you out and alert humans to your presence. Overall, enemies are much less likely to put themselves in immediate danger. This also means that if there's a larger threat, like a group of infected, the AI will prioritize them over you. This allows for quick getaways and intriguing stealth sequences where you can use your environment to your advantage. There was some wonky AI in the first game where enemies would run in front of cover and then run back, sort of like the cops in GTA 4. Thankfully, that isn't present here. The weapons in Part 2 are very similar to the weapons in Part 1. There are 12 weapons in total. Ellie has the pump shotgun, similar to Joel's, bolt-action rifle, similar to Joel's, revolver, this is Joel's, pistol, similar to Joel's, bow, similar to Joel's, and silenced submachine gun, similar to the Spectre from multiplayer. Abby, on the other hand, has the semi-auto rifle, like the one in multiplayer, militarized pistol, similar to Joel's, hunting pistol, similar to the El Diablo, double-barrel shotgun, like the one in multiplayer, crossbow, like the one in the multiplayer, and flamethrower, similar to Joel's. This vast arsenal of weapons allows you to approach every combat situation differently. The bow, crossbow, Ellie's iconic switchblade, Abby's ability to craft shivs, and the ability to craft and attach a silencer to your pistol allows for a more concealed approach. High damage output from the bow results in quick kills, while a well-placed shot in the head with a silenced pistol results in a dropped foe. You can also sneak up behind enemies to grab them and take them out. Ellie's quick stealth takedowns and multiple stealth perks lead players to a certain playstyle with the character. Abby, on the other hand, has slower stealth kills and multiple perks that benefit a head-on approach. With Abby, you have to unlock the ability to craft shivs, while Ellie starts with her switchblade. Also with Abby, you're able to unlock the momentum ability in the close quarters skill tree. This ability reads, after killing an enemy with a strike, for a short time your melee attack will also be strike. Strikes are high damage melee moves against stunned or surprised enemies. This same skill tree also improves healing and the effectiveness of the momentum ability, all to insinuate a player to go in shooting with Abby. Overall, the gameplay of Part 2 is a much needed improvement over Part 1, but it still retains the familiar scheme that allowed new players and veteran players to jump right in. Part 3, Graphics. This game's graphics are amazing. It's as simple as that. Gameplay transitions seamlessly into cutscenes and every ounce of the game looks realistic. Even compared to Part 1, which came out in 2013, this game looks 100 times better than it. Naughty Dog really pushed the mocap technology and animation for this game. Besides Ghost of Tsushima, God of War, and Red Dead Redemption 2, I believe this game has some of the best graphics of the decade, if not in the history of video games. Unlike those games and any other games Naughty Dog has produced, this game tries to be an interactive movie. The cinematography, story, and massive amount of cutscene really shows how much this game is supposed to not only be played, but also watched. Overall, I believe the graphics from The Last of Us Part 2 are some of the best the video game industry has ever seen. It sets a new standard for games like it and appears to push everything to the max. Part 4, Completion. This section is for those who love trophy and achievement hunting, such as myself, and completing games. There are multiple collection trophies, competition trophies, a trophy for finding all workbenches, a trophy for unlocking all safes, a trophy for fully upgrading your perks, a trophy for fully upgrading your weapons, and finally a trophy for completing the game. Unlike The Last of Us Part 1, there are no difficulty trophies, except for the Grounded trophy and Permadeath trophy added in a later update. And as of the recording of this show, there are no multiplayer trophies. These are distinct differences from the trophy list of the first game, which had you complete the game on every difficulty, Survivor and lower. This means you can complete the game on a minimum of 2 to 3 playthroughs. It took me 2.5. This is especially true if you put the game on the easiest difficulty. Also, unlike the first game, this game has you collecting not only artifacts, but also superhero cards, coins, and journal entries. Naughty Dog does a great job hiding some artifacts, but not so much that they're completely missable. You just need to explore more than you normally would to collect all of these objects. The workbenches and safes are also well placed throughout the game, allowing you to restock supplies and upgrade weapons periodically. Safes require you to find combinations and do slight puzzles to open them, and the reward is you can claim an abundant amount of materials and supplies. Workbenches let you use weapon parts to improve your weapon's damage, accuracy, sway, and reload speed. Journal entries are a lot like artifacts, but they allow you to delve into Ellie's mind as she travels alone through Seattle. It lets us follow her thought process and see what she's going through. It's a great insight into one of the main characters of the game. Coins and superhero cards are easily the most missable collectibles in the game, as they're small and placed in much more obscure areas. However, they're neat little collectibles that really break the tension in an otherwise dauntless and shattering journey. Lastly, the Easter egg and competition trophies are easy to obtain as long as you play the game well and explore. Finding Sir Francis Drake's ring from Uncharted in a broken down bank vault and the little egg thing from Jak and Daxter is super cool in this otherwise broken world. Platinuming and completing this game is fairly easy. The hardest part is playing through another 20 to 30 hours of shattering story if you didn't finish it in 2 to 3 goes. If you're looking for a medium level platinum, this is the game for you. Part 5. Outside Factors. Outside factors, such as company policies, delays, fan bases, etc., can have an impact on how one views a piece of media. For example, some forms of media have toxic fan bases that can push people away from enjoying a show or game to its fullest potential, while other games or shows could have a very welcoming, open, and honest communities that provide growth and diversity. We covered a ton of The Last of Us Part 2's outside factors in The Facts. Here, I'll briefly touch on why those could influence a consumer's stance. Many people decided to boycott the game in response to the overworking and harsh environment the developers went through. This is justifiable and a reasonable response to something that shouldn't have been happening in any workplace. However, some people were angry about the inclusion of people of color, the two main characters being women, the inclusion of an openly trans character, and the fact that Ellie and Dina were in a relationship. To me, this is an unacceptable reason to boycott a game. The video game industry is long overdue for its inclusion of people of color, women, and those within the LGBTQ+ community. And the fact that it's finally happening is a good thing. The more people that can look up to a character and say, that could be me, the better. Two prime examples being Miles Morales and Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther. The fact that black children have superheroes they can look up to is fantastic. While The Last of Us Part 2 might not have the best role models, the inclusion of more than just straight white men allows for a broader audience to connect with these characters. So, those who are upset because of this had no real reason other than hate. The Last of Us Part 2 was delayed twice. Originally set to release February 21st, 2020, it was pushed back to May 29th, 2020. Then a third delay caused the game to finally release on June 19th, 2020. While it's not unusual for games to be delayed, many fans were upset and put off by the delays. When asked about the first delay, Druckmann said, "At this point, we're faced with two options. Compromise parts of the games or get more time. We went with the latter, and this new release date allows us to finish everything to our level of satisfaction while also reducing stress on the team, which we know didn't happen." The game was also delayed due to COVID-19 and Sony/Naughty Dog's inability to distribute the game to their liking. Even now, as COVID ravages the world, we're seeing small distribution rates and a lack of speed when it comes to the mail. I mean, just look at how hard it's been to get your hands on an Xbox Series X or PS5. Many people also speculated that releasing a game about a deadly virus while a pandemic swept the world also wasn't a great idea. Lastly, after word got out about the harsh working environment at Naughty Dog, there were the leaks in April. Some people read the leaks and decided not to buy the game because they didn't like what was in store. Other people, myself included, avoided the leaks at all costs, hoping to get the full experience and enjoyment out of the game. Sadly, a lot of Twitter users took to Naughty Dog's Twitter comments and began spoiling the game, trying to cause those who still wanted to buy the game to become angry and sad. The months leading up to the release of The Last of Us Part 2 were filled with turmoil and drama. Many people became irritated with Naughty Dog for both justifiable reasons and reasons based on malice and hatred. These feelings caused a negative perception to surround the game before launch and a decent way into launch. It impacted many user reviews, as seen in the Metacritic reviews, and caused an outrage in fans. Even though I thought the game was wonderful, many people thought Naughty Dog's flaws outweighed the quality of the game. Hello, and welcome to the last part of the review. This is the part where I talk about why I like the game so much, and let me tell you, I love this game. I mentioned that I bought the Digital Deluxe Edition because GameStop didn't do a midnight release, So I spent like $280 in this game because I spent $200 on the collector's edition, and I spent $80 on the digital deluxe edition so I could play the game at midnight. So I own a sealed copy of a collector's edition that's just sitting on my desk. Now, this game is wonderful. I really, really, really like this game. Between making you play as Abby and making you kind of like sympathize with her and showing you that even though you've played 13 plus hours with Ellie and Joel, there really isn't any black and white in this game compared to what there is in the first game. Every action in this game has a consequence, and it's really hard to tell if that's good or bad. Between Manny getting shot in the head while Abby and him are trying to open that door, and Jesse and Ellie bursting through, and Jesse getting blasted in the noggin, and everything else, every little thing that happens in this game has a consequence, and it's not black and white like in the first game. The first game is very, very black and white compared to this game. It's Joel and Ellie going on a mission to try and find the Fireflies so maybe a vaccine can get made. The only morally gray area the first game enters is whenever Joel takes Ellie off of the table and kills Marlene, because that's like the first real selfish act he's done. Everything else has been for Ellie, like he trying to save Ellie and get Ellie to the Fireflies because that's what he's supposed to do. But that moment sets the entire tone for the second game between him taking her off that table and him lying to her at the end of the game. It sets up this whole, hey, everybody's human, people fuck up, not everything is as black and white as it seems. And that really leads me into my next point. Joel is one of my favorite characters, and that might be because he reminds me so much of my dad growing up. When you grow up, like as you're growing up, your parents are like these indestructible people. They're like your heroes. You know, nothing can go wrong with your parents. And in the first game, Joel really reflects that. Joel is like a badass. He's a hard ass. And yeah, like he's down on his luck. He's depressed. You know, his fucking daughter dies, right? Sarah dies right at the start of the first game, and that's why the entire first game is just about Joel regaining his humanity and showing that he's still a person. And the second game does a really good job of cementing the fact that, yo, hey, we're all people. As you grow up, you realize that your parents aren't these indestructible people, and they are just people, just like you and me. They feel depression, they feel pain, they get angry, like all of these things. And Joel in the second game really makes me feel like, this is my dad. So one of my favorite scenes in the entire game is whenever Ellie comes up onto the porch to like talk to Joel after he butts in, when the dude is yelling at her and Dina after they've kissed at the community party. And Joel says to Ellie, if somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again. Now, despite the fact that, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Joel is just a person at the end of the day, and he recognizes that what he did, like, fucked humanity, but he wouldn't change it. He would not have it any other way. And I don't know what I would do in that situation, but I truly respect that, and I like that about Joel, because it shows that he has his humanity, and he doesn't regret what he did, because he's a human, and nothing is right or wrong in this fucked up world that they're living in. Now, that's not to say what happened to Joel and Ellie in the first game with the cannibals and all that isn't wrong. That's incredibly wrong, but it's just the whole overarching, yo, hey, nothing's as clear as it seems in this fucked up post-apocalyptic world. That's like the whole message, especially when the game forces you to play as Abby. The first time I played as Abby, the first time I played through this game, I hated it. I didn't like Abby because she killed Joel and she killed Jesse and everything. I did not want to play as her. But playing through the game a second time, I'm really glad I did, because I really sympathize with Abby. I love Ellie, and after playing through the game a second time, it made me love Abby too. Neither of these characters are protagonists. They are fucked up in their own kind of ways. After Joel dies, Ellie basically just becomes how Joel acted right after Sarah dies. She's depressed, upset. She doesn't know what to do. She begins to shut herself off from her friends, from Dina, everything. And you can really see that after she tortures Nora in the hospital, after she yeets herself back into the spore, like the spores in the basement. As the game progresses, she kind of realizes this isn't who I want to become. I don't want to become like Abby. I don't want to become like Joel. That's not how I want to do it. So she spares Abby at the end of the game one final time, and she goes home only to realize that, like, she can't play the guitar anymore and that Dina's not there. And that was a soul crushing moment the first time I played. But in my head canon, I like to believe that because she grew as a person, she went out to find Dina and, hopefully they make amends. I don't know if we're going to get a part 3, but that's what I'm hoping. Now, as far as Abby goes, I liked playing as Abby the second time. I really, really did. Abby is a very good character. She spent the past 5 years of her life trying to hunt down and kill the man that, killed her father. And now that she's done that, she doesn't really know what to do. She's kind of realized that she's became a sheep in the middle of this war between the wolves and the Seraphites. So when she finds Lev and Yara, and Owen kind of shows her like, yo, hey, I don't want to fight for this. This isn't what we're about. Abby takes it into her own hands, like, yeah, and helps Lev and Yara. And even though Owen and Mel and Yara all end up dying in the end, she sticks with it, and her and Lev go to Santa Barbara to try and find the light, to try and find the last of the Fireflies, because that's what she believes in. She opens her eyes and realizes, this is fucked up. What I'm doing to these people, what the wolves are doing to these people, is fucked up. So the fact that she is able to realize that and have that character development is amazing. And all while all of her friends are dying at the hand of Ellie and Tommy and everything. Arguably, she had more taken away from her than Ellie did because all of her friends fucking died. Like, not only did her dad die, but all of her friends died. And Lev still convinced Abby to spare Ellie and Dina's life. And that's just insane. Both of these characters had tremendous character development throughout the game, and I'm there for it. And people who didn't like that the main characters were women, or didn't like that they were like in a romantic relationship together, can fuck off, because I really enjoyed the fact that we didn't play as Joel. And even though I didn't want Joel to die, and I honestly didn't really think he would, it was very needed for this game, and I loved it for that. I liked this game more than the first game, wholeheartedly, 100%. And even though it left me feeling crushed after the first time I played it, I laid in bed for like 2 hours doing nothing because I didn't know what to do. Like, I felt empty inside. I put off the platinum for so long because I didn't want to have that feeling again, but I'm really glad I finally got around to playing that second time and watching every cutscene and reading every artifact and reading every journal entry and really figuring out what was going on and experiencing and going into the game with a more open mind the second time than I did the first time. It really helped me. And please play this game if you have any interest at all. Like, even if you're not into video games, you can put it on the easiest difficulty and just experience this game because it is fantastic. Play the first one, play this one, and if you don't want to support Naughty Dog, buy them pre-owned because they are 100% fantastic, and I highly, highly recommend them. Even though the zombie trope is overdone in media nowadays with The Walking Dead and everything else, they're basically just background characters. They're just an obstacle because they couldn't put humans everywhere. They're just they were just like a catalyst to basically get this post-apocalyptic world started. So really, they aren't the main part of this game at all. So if you don't like zombies, I still recommend this because the game's not about them. The game is not about the zombies. They're trying to figure out what caused it. They know what caused it. This game is really saying that an eye for an eye keeps the whole world blind, and not everything is as black and white or as clear as you might think it is. And because I went into this game with the expectations from the first one, I really didn't come into it with the open mind that I should have. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm really glad I played it that second time. I highly recommend going through that roller coaster of emotions as every person that the characters love and appreciate get beaten and bruised and torn down and even die. Like, you watch these characters like crumble to pieces only to build themselves back up and become better people because of it. And I feel like this game does a really good job of displaying that message. So I really hope this review helped you decide if you wanted to play it or not, or just, made you itch to play it again. So that's all for me. If you want to contact me, please message me at HunterClass on Instagram and Twitter. You can follow my Twitch at twitch.tv/FallopianGolem. I have a Discord and a YouTube. This is the first episode, so any feedback is highly appreciated at all. I don't have an email set up or anything like that yet. So my Twitch or my Instagram or Twitter are the best places to contact me, or Discord if you have me on there. Once again, I highly appreciate it if you listen to the whole episode, and I will see you next time. Please have a wonderful day.